At 82, Dolly Parton's husband, Carl Dean, has passed away. But it's not just his passing that's making headlines. Shockwaves are rippling through the world as unexpected tributes pour in from celebrities you'd never imagine, and a deeply personal tribute from Dolly herself. So raw, so emotional, it's left even her closest friends speechless. Stick with me, because what we're about to unveil will forever change how you perceive Dolly Parton and her marriage. For decades, Dolly and Carl maintained one of the most enigmatic marriages in Hollywood. While Dolly shimmered under the spotlight, Carl chose the serene life, far removed from cameras and red carpets. We, the fans, only glimpsed him through Dolly's anecdotes, stories that portrayed him as her rock, her anchor, her enduring love. Now, at 82, Carl Dean is gone, leaving behind his beloved wife and a legacy of secrets, unwavering devotion, and a love story that defied the odds. In this video, we'll take you inside the intimate farewell Dolly crafted for her husband, a farewell that astounded even those closest to her. We'll uncover the surprising surge of celebrity tributes from stars you'd least expect, and expose a hidden side of Carl Dean's life, carefully shielded from the public eye. Stay tuned, because this isn't solely about loss. It's about love, legacy, and revealing a facet of Dolly Parton you've never witnessed before. Throughout much of Dolly Parton's illustrious career, Carl Dean existed as a shadow, always present, but just out of view. Despite their 50-plus years of marriage, Carl's avoidance of the spotlight became legendary. Paparazzi couldn't capture him, interviewers couldn't entice him, and fans could only speculate about the man who had captured the heart of an icon. But on the morning of February 29, 2025, that quiet life reached a gentle, heartbreaking conclusion. According to family sources, Carl Dean passed away peacefully at home, in the very Nashville residence where he and Dolly built their life. No hospital drama, no media frenzy, just the stillness of a man who lived life on his own terms, passing away in the same manner. Even in death, Carl remained private. There was no immediate public statement from Dolly. Friends of the couple shared that Dolly, known for her warmth and humor, withdrew into herself. One insider, a family friend for over 40 years, described the atmosphere as quiet, almost sacred, like stepping into a place where love resided for decades and was now learning to live without him. But here's the shocker. Carl's funeral wasn't orchestrated by a publicist or manager. It was meticulously planned by Dolly herself, down to the smallest detail. Each flower, each song, each tribute was hand-picked, not for show, but as a final private gift from a wife to her husband. No cameras, no press releases, just an intimate farewell attended by family, lifelong friends, and a select few who had earned Carl's rare trust. This was Carl's wish, private, personal, and removed from the glaring public curiosity. But what no one anticipated was the outpouring of celebrity tributes that followed, revealing the profound reach of Carl's quiet influence. In a world where celebrity funerals often morph into media spectacles, Dolly Parton chose a different path, one that perfectly mirrored her own heart and the fiercely private love story she shared with Carl Dean. What renders this tribute so unforgettable isn't merely its beauty, but the window it provides into a side of Dolly the world had rarely glimpsed. Vulnerable, unguarded, and stripped of the rhinestones and rehearsed charm. According to those close to the family, Dolly spent the day following Carl's passing, immersed in planning his tribute, not as a global superstar, but simply as a grieving wife bidding farewell to her silent partner through every triumph and trial. The tribute unfolded not in a grand hall or celebrity-packed venue, but in a small white chapel tucked away on their Nashville property, a place where Carl often retreated for quiet prayer and reflection. The chapel was decorated with simplicity. Wildflowers Carl himself would pick for Dolly from their property line. Along the aisle framed photos spanning their entire 58-year marriage. Some never-before-seen images pulled from albums Carl kept tucked away in the drawer of his bedside table. There were no staged photo ops or glossy media handouts. Pure, personal, and heartbreakingly sincere. But it was Dolly's tribute speech that left everyone speechless. For decades, Dolly had cultivated her public persona on humor, grace, and a sense of invincibility. But in that moment, it all dissolved away. Her voice trembling, her hands gripping a handwritten letter, Dolly spoke directly to Carl, not to the crowd or the cameras, just to him. She began by thanking him for loving the woman behind the wigs and sequins, for knowing the real Dolly, the one who sang to him in the kitchen when no one was watching, the one who curled up next to him on the porch swing after long tours, the one who sometimes doubted herself despite all her fame. "You knew me before the world did," she said, her voice cracking with emotion, "and you love me just the same." Dolly then read excerpts from love letters Carl had written her over the years, letters that no one, not even her closest friends, knew existed. Some were simple notes scribbled on the backs of receipts or torn pages from notebooks. Others were longer, heartfelt letters Carl left for her to find when she returned home from the road. Through those words, attendees glimpsed the tender, poetic side of Carl Dean, a side hidden even from Dolly's most devoted fans. But here's the truly stunning part. Dolly ended her tribute by singing, not one of her chart-topping hits, but a song she had written solely for Carl decades ago, never recorded, never shared with anyone outside their marriage. With just her acoustic guitar and a trembling voice, she sang the lyrics that captured a lifetime of love, heartbreak, and devotion. The chapel fell silent, with only Dolly's voice echoing through the wooden rafters. By the time she reached the final verse, tears were streaming down her face and nearly everyone else's. This wasn't the polished performer the world was accustomed to seeing. This was Dolly Parton, the woman, the widow, the wife, laying her heart bare in the only way she knew how. Even those who had known the couple for decades admitted they had never fully grasped the depth of their bond until that moment. Carl may have stayed out of the public eye, but in Dolly's heart, he was always the leading man. While the funeral was intimate and private, the impact of her tribute rippled far beyond the chapel walls, because the next part of this story took an unexpected turn. As some of the biggest names in entertainment began stepping forward to share their own stories of Carl Dean, stories that would surprise even Dolly herself. For years, Carl Dean was the ghost in Dolly Parton's glittering world, a name fans knew, but a face they almost never saw. Most assumed Carl had no real connection to the entertainment industry, choosing instead to live quietly in the background while Dolly took center stage. But after his passing, something incredible happened. A flood of tributes from some of the biggest names in music, television, and film began to pour in, and what they revealed shocked even those who considered themselves die-hard Dolly fans. First came the country music legends. Loretta Lynn's family released a heartfelt statement revealing that Carl had once driven Loretta and Dolly to their very first joint performance back in the 1960s, long before either of them had bodyguards, personal assistants, or luxury tour buses. Back then, Carl was more than Dolly's husband. He was her quiet protector, the man who ensured both women got home safely when the honky-tonks turned rowdy. Next came tributes from contemporary artists who admitted Carl had been a kind of unofficial mentor, offering advice not on music, but on how to survive fame without losing yourself. Kenny Chesney, who had grown close to Dolly over the years, shared that Carl once told him, "If you want to keep your soul, Remember that what happens when the cameras are off matters more than what happens when they're on. Those words, Kenny confessed, had stuck with him throughout his entire career. But here's where the story takes a surprising twist. It wasn't just country stars who stepped forward. Hollywood A-listers, including Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, shared personal stories of Carl's quiet wisdom. Jane recalled a dinner party at Dolly's Tennessee home during the filming of 9 to 5. While the women sipped wine and laughed in the living room, Carl quietly grilled steaks on the back porch, eventually sitting down with Jane and sharing a simple but powerful piece of advice about life, marriage, and staying grounded in an industry that thrives on illusion. "He told me," Jane recalled, "don't believe the hype, good or bad. It's all noise. The real stuff is what you wake up with every morning." I never forgot that. Even music legends from outside the country world paid tribute. Paul McCartney shared that Carl once attended a private industry dinner with Dolly in the early 80s, where the two men ended up talking about everything from farming to fame. Paul described Carl as one of the most genuine men I ever met, completely unimpressed by celebrity. Most came from Reba McEntire, who revealed a story that had remained private for decades. In the early 90s, after the tragic plane crash that took the lives of Reba's band members, Reba was inconsolable. What few knew was that Carl Dean, a man she had only met briefly, was the one who quietly called her, not with grand words, but with an offer to sit with her in silence whenever she needed company. "He told me, sometimes you don't need answers. Sometimes you just need someone to sit next to you and say nothing at all," Reba recalled, her voice breaking with emotion. That was Carl, the man no one saw, but everyone felt. As the stories poured in, a clearer picture of Carl Dean began to emerge, not just as Dolly Parton's elusive husband, but as a man whose quiet wisdom and gentle heart had quietly shaped the lives of some of the most powerful figures in entertainment. But here's the shocking part. Along with these tributes came whispers of secrets Carl had carried with him to the grave. Stories about moments when Carl had to step in to protect Dolly from the darker side of fame. Times when he walked away from fortune to preserve his own peace, and even hints at private struggles the couple faced, struggles they kept hidden from the world. As the tributes continued, it became clear that Carl Dean wasn't just a mystery. He was a legend in his own right, a man whose impact reached far beyond the walls of their Nashville home. And just when everyone thought they knew the whole story, one final tribute surfaced, one that would change the way fans saw Carl Dean forever. Just when the world thought they had heard all there was to know about Carl Dean, one final tribute emerged, and it came from a source no one expected. This wasn't from a country legend, a Hollywood star, or even a member of Dolly's inner circle. It came from a man who had stayed hidden for decades, a man whose connection to Carl Dean had been deliberately kept from the public eye until now. The tribute came from a retired Nashville music executive named Walter Harris, a man who had quietly left the industry in the late 1980s under mysterious circumstances. His name rang a faint bell for those deeply entrenched in country music's history. But to the average fan, he was a ghost. Yet as Walter's heartfelt tribute to Carl Dean circulated, it became clear that his story would reshape the way the world understood Dolly and Carl's marriage and the sacrifices Carl made to protect it. Walter, in his own words, admitted he owed his life and his freedom to Carl Dean. In a rare interview given to a local Tennessee publication, Walter detailed how back in the 1970s, Carl had saved him from a dangerous situation involving the darker underbelly of the music business. At the time, Walter had been working as a talent scout and had unknowingly gotten tangled up with powerful individuals tied to organized crime, individuals who saw the booming country music scene as a gold mine for laundering money. Carl Dean, though known publicly as a simple man running his asphalt business, had quietly developed a reputation in certain circles, not as a tough guy or an enforcer, but as someone who understood how to diffuse volatile situations with nothing more than calm words and an unshakable sense of decency. Carl wasn't a man who started fights, but he was a man who could end them with quiet authority. According to Walter, Carl had personally intervened after Walter had unknowingly signed contracts with dangerous figures. Carl didn't do it for fame, money, or recognition. He did it because Walter was a friend of Dolly's from her early days, and Carl saw protecting Dolly's friends as an extension of protecting Dolly herself. But that wasn't all. Walter's tribute revealed that Carl's quiet protection of Dolly extended far beyond the occasional intervention. There were times when Carl personally ensured that certain predatory figures in the music industry were kept far away from his wife. In the 1970s and 1980s, when country music was exploding in popularity, young female artists were often preyed upon by powerful men, producers, agents, and executives who saw their innocence and ambition as an opportunity for exploitation. Carl Dean, despite his aversion to fame and public attention, would show up when it mattered most. Quietly, without fanfare, he would make his presence known at certain industry parties, not as Dolly Parton's husband, but as a man who made it clear that Dolly was not to be touched, manipulated, or coerced. His presence alone was often enough to stop potential predators in their tracks. But here's the twist. Walter's tribute revealed that Carl paid a personal price for being Dolly's silent guardian. There were powerful men in the industry who saw Carl's protective nature as a threat, men who quietly worked to exclude Dolly from certain deals and opportunities. Some of Dolly's most lucrative deals, including potential crossover projects in Hollywood, were quietly sabotaged by men who wanted Dolly to play by their rules, not hers. Carl knew this, and yet, according to Walter, Carl never once regretted the sacrifices. In Walter's words, Carl understood that being married to a star meant sometimes you had to be the shadow behind the light. But Carl was never just a shadow. He was the steel frame holding up the whole house. Walter's tribute ended with a revelation that left readers stunned. Carl Dean had, for decades, kept a private journal documenting every deal he protected Dolly from, every threat he quietly neutralized, and every moment where his presence alone had changed the course of her career. This journal, according to Walter, wasn't a tool for revenge or blackmail. It was a love letter, a record of everything Carl had done in the name of protecting the woman he loved. And here's the heartbreaking part. According to Walter, Dolly never knew the full extent of Carl's sacrifices. She knew he was protective, but she never knew about the late-night phone calls, the quiet confrontations, or the personal deals Carl had turned down just to keep her safe. This journal, Walter revealed, was left with a trusted family friend, someone Carl knew would only release its contents after his death, when the truth could no longer hurt Dolly, but only honor her. The existence of this journal set off a firestorm of speculation, not just about what it contained, but about what it revealed about the true nature of Carl and Dolly's relationship. They weren't just husband and wife, they were co-conspirators in a lifelong act of love, protection, and quiet sacrifice. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The journal wasn't the only secret Carl left behind. As the days after his funeral unfolded, more pieces of Carl's private life began to emerge. Pieces that would paint a picture of a man far more complex and far more heroic than the world had ever realized. As the days turned into weeks after Carl Dean's passing, the world began to see the full picture of the man Dolly Parton had loved for nearly 6 decades. For so long, Carl had been the ghost in Dolly's glittering shadow, a quiet presence who many assumed simply wanted nothing to do with fame. But the truth, the real truth, was so much deeper, more powerful, and more emotional than anyone could have imagined. That journal Carl left behind became more than just a collection of stories. It became a testament to the unseen battles he fought, the deals he refused, and the predators he quietly pushed away from Dolly's path. Every page was a reminder that Carl Dean was more than just a supportive husband. He was her silent guardian, her protector, the man who made sure Dolly could shine without fear. But Carl's legacy wasn't just in the past. It lived on in the values Dolly now carries forward. In interviews following Carl's passing, Dolly spoke candidly about the lessons her husband had taught her about loyalty, privacy, and the importance of staying grounded no matter how bright the spotlight gets. Even as tributes poured in from fellow celebrities, country legends, and fans around the world, Dolly's most moving words were reserved for the man who never asked for applause, but always deserved a standing ovation. She spoke of the quiet moments, the nights on the porch where no words were needed, the laughter that filled their humble home, the unwavering presence of a man who never once let her face the storms of fame alone. While the world adored Dolly for her music and charm, Carl adored her simply for being Dolly, not the superstar, not the icon, just Dolly. The woman who could light up a room with her smile, even before she was a star. And just when fans thought they knew it all, one final revelation came to light. Close family friends shared that Carl had quietly made arrangements for a special tribute long before his health began to decline. Knowing how difficult it would be for Dolly to face his loss, he secretly recorded a personal message, a final love letter, to be played at his own memorial service. In that recording, Carl's voice, gentle but firm, spoke directly to Dolly. "You were always my shining star, but I never needed the world to know that, because you always knew. If I could do it all over again, I'd choose the same quiet life beside you. No cameras, no crowds, just you and me, the way it was always meant to be. I'll be waiting on the porch, darling. Take your time." That simple message left the entire room in tears, not just for the love story they shared, but for the reminder that true love doesn't need to be performed for the world to see. Carl and Dolly's story wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about a love so strong it didn't need an audience. And as Dolly stood beside Carl's casket, saying her final, "If this video touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more exclusive stories, tributes, and behind-the-scenes glimpses into the lives of the celebrities you love." What's your favorite memory of Dolly and Carl's legendary love story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, behind every icon, there's a story the world rarely sees, and we're here to bring those stories to light.